All right, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dino Omar, and it gives me great pleasure to be your host for this morning because we are going to be talking about the topic that saya rasa something yang sangat exciting, but also at the same time, it is sangat crucial for us to have an understanding of because for me, the script has never changed. If you think about it, we are all emerging from a pandemic. And if there is one thing that we can learn from this pandemic is that for us to rely on our businesses to be successful on traditional models, on traditional values and traditional modes of operation is basically us priming a shotgun to shoot ourselves in the foot. It is a no-brainer that you have to level up your businesses by embracing digitalization. It is a no-brainer that for your businesses to thrive, it needs to have the flexibility, the reachability, the accessibility, and also the scalability that digitalization offers. And one of the key ways for you to ensure that your business is going to have all those functions, all those features that I just mentioned, is for you to adopt, or at least at this point in time, for you to consider cloud computing for businesses. Because, hey, you know what? That's the future. We are talking about going into 5G in the future. We're talking about the nation that we are living in right now, Malaysia, accelerating the capabilities of local businesses to not only service Malaysians better, but also to reach further, if not within the region, but also in the world. But this is only capable, and you're only giving your business this capability if you're embracing digitalization. And cloud computing is going to open up new doors, going to open up new avenues for you to see the way you manage your businesses. So today, apa yang kita nak buat sekarang ni is we are going to talk about cloud computing for businesses. We are debunking cloud myths for Malaysian businesses in this webinar. And this webinar is brought to you by Astro AWANI LINC, but in kerjasama with Maxis Business. So it's, this is us like Astro AWANI. We want to talk about something, we bring the best of the best from the industry to come on and talk about this. So it gives me great pleasure to invite my fellow speakers to go ahead and turn on your cameras and also to unmute yourself so that we can get this party going. I'd like to invite Louis Piana, the head of Fixed Solutions, as well as Fazliza binti Rosli, the head of Fiber Expansion Strategy of Planning over at Maxis. Hello, good morning to Faz and Louis. How are you guys doing?
Morning, Dino. Very well, and you?
Good morning.
Hi, Faz.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Me here.
Sorry?
Thank you for having me here.
No. It's great. See, I anticipated that you guys were going to wear green because of Maxis, tapi nampaknya you guys have a Maxis background. So I was thinking, what should I do to represent Awani? Okay, I'll wear orange today, just so that we are all represented equally here.
We don't want to blend too nicely into the background.
Oh, that you're talking about my background. Okay. But yeah, we want to talk about cloud computing for businesses. There are so many, when we say cloud computing, to the regular or the layman or for the average Malaysian business owner, right, there's 1,001 things that would probably be going in through their minds. There are 1,001 worries, and us being the skeptical business owners that you might be as we emerge from the pandemic, it's only natural for people to have such reservations. And this is because, and I'm guessing here, but I have very, very strong feeling, this is because the need to digitalize is accelerated exponentially because of the pandemic. Suddenly, businesses find themselves in a situation where they have to do this, and they have to do this almost immediately. So when we want to talk about cloud, it becomes scary for them. So from the mouth of the experts themselves, could you please, let's get the ball rolling by talking about defining what cloud for businesses is to begin with from each of your perspective, because Louis is the expert in everything that's the technology, and Faz is the expert in the network. So I want to hear from you guys. Let's start off with that. Perhaps we can start with Faz. Louis, ladies first.
Of course.
To me, cloud is a different way of thinking. It's a new operating model where there's so many things you can do on it. So it's cloud services that it can be on demand, it's pay per use, it should be more cost efficient. to the businesses is something that we shouldn't be afraid of. There's so many ways, so many outlets for them to reach out to learn more about cloud. And of course, it has to come with reliable network depending on the needs of the businesses, which we will talk later in subsequent questions.
Points.
Yeah, points, yes. But I feel like cloud is coming. We should embrace it, and you can reach out to people like us to know more about this in the future.
Great. Okay. And over to you, Louis.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose you're right. If you look up the universal definitions, it could scare you because they tend to be quite complex. But I think to me, one of the biggest misconceptions people have about cloud is that they think it's a product or a widget that you just go buy off the shelf, and it's not. Cloud is a operating methodology and it's a journey. So we always talk about transformation as being the end game, but often we lose sight about the fact that a lot of Malaysian companies and companies globally are still very much on the start of that journey. And cloud's more than just computer resources in terms of storage and so forth. It's an IT service that touches almost all aspects of IT, whether that's networking across security. We've seen it in unified communications, it can be as complex as a analytics ecosystem, or it can be as simple as an Office 365 license. So it really depends on the organization themselves. It depends on where they are, and the definition will change vastly.
Right. Yeah, and you've put it quite nicely, because there are many misconceptions, and that's what we're going to try to address here. Out of the many misconceptions, we are basically trying to compress all of them down into 5 myths that we want to debunk here. So if we can go ahead and flash that slide, we will tell you right now that out of the 5 myths that we wanna talk about, let's go to the next slide, Lynette. The 5 myths are: the biggest barrier of cloud adoption is high cost. The second one is only large corporations benefit from moving to the cloud. The third is the cloud is less secure. Then the fourth is the cloud is independent from my network. And number 5 is I need to hire a dedicated cloud team. So we're going to touch everything. We're going to touch about cost. We're going to talk about, application. We're going to talk about security, so on and so forth. So we've got our work cut out for us. But of course, we are Malaysians. Louis, in case you did not know this yet, if you talk to any Malaysian business owner about anything new, the first is going to be, how much, huh? How much, huh? Really? And the bigger, and that's what we want to talk about. The biggest barrier to cloud adoption is high cost. But I'm only guessing here. We've actually got a question that we want to ask our attendees here. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and whip out your mobile phones and scan the QR code lagi, not your MySejahtera, yeah? Scan this QR code with your camera and do go ahead and punch in your answer. We want to know, from your perspective, the biggest cloud challenges are which one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is live. Okay, so a lot of people are saying security and privacy concerns, but of course, as I guessed, high cost is it. Let's give this another 10 seconds for you to go ahead and punch in your answers. At the moment, it's not changing. So I guess people are going ahead with this. Oh, like you've got other stuff as well. Also, at the same time, guys, we would very much love it if you could share with us your questions if you have any. We will either be taking the questions as we go along if we see that it fits what we're talking about at that point in time, or we're going to tap out all the questions right at the very end and we'll try to get all the answers for you. But at the moment, security and privacy concerns is number 1 and high cost is number 2. But I'm sure, you know what, it's right up there, and we are going to be addressing both of these things over here. But okay, so we are going to talk about security a bit later on, but right now I want to talk about cost. So for the simplistic question would be how much, but then that's not something we can answer, right? Because it is all dependent on each application and each institution and what their requirements are. But Louis, to begin with, let's talk about the cost involved in adopting cloud for your business. You mentioned just now, it's not just an application that you need to download for your devices, to run the business. What is it exactly, and what sort of cost should we be looking at?
Yeah, look, Dino, I mean, and we've said it right in the beginning, and we'll probably say it a few times during the course of this presentation. It really depends on customer, where they are. Their perception of their own cloud journey and the troubles that they're trying to overcome are going to differ, and the way they view it will also change. But you're right, and we clearly saw it, that there is perhaps a perception that that you're going to pay more for a cloud service than what you would in a traditional way. But I think a lot of that also needs to be put into perspective. If we look at something as simple as a physical server, this is something that you're going to have to buy, and whether you're running a database on it or whether you end up running a website on it, you're going to have to, you have to fork out the capital cost for it. You're going to have to license it. You're going to have to secure it. You're ultimately going to have to back it up, and you're going to have to maintain it. And at the end of the day, you're paying for that service whether you use it or not. And as soon as you run out of capacity and you need to scale up, you're going to have to buy a new service or a new server, and so that cycle just continues. The thing about cloud is that it's got a ecosystem that is completely coherent. So all the peripheral services that you would need to run that server are already integrated or can be attached as you want. So I guess the fundamental difference is that that'll provide you that exact requirement or the exact server that you need, but it'll allow you to only consume it as you need. And if you need to scale it up, you just add additional resources. And if you're done with it, you can scale it down, and it's gone. I think one of the biggest problems that we have when people do a total cost of ownership around cloud is that they don't consider some of the great benefits of cloud. Cloud is very much about the flexibility, the agility that brings organizations, also the operational overhead or the operational efficiencies that it brings to organizations. At the end of the day, with automation, with visualization, you're able to reduce a lot of those costs. And I think people don't consider those because they're harder to quantify in terms of dollars and cents. One also has to consider, service providers like Maxis gives you the tools to retrospectively go in and analyze what's happening inside your cloud environment, and you're able to, derive additional efficiencies by going in and tweaking those resources, understanding where your overutilization is. So, it's an ongoing evolution of making sure that you're not overspending in the environment that you've spun up. I guess if I have to think of an example, we recently assisted the Brixfield Asia College in one of their migrations, and it was 50 servers that comprised of both mobile and an application servers that we moved over to AWS Cloud. Just therein alone, they realized a lot of operational cost savings when we had moved them over, and just by tweaking that environment, they were also able to save an additional 20% on the cloud spend. It's a good example of I guess breaking that myth. And I think what organizations will find that if they partner with the right cloud partner like Maxis, you're going to be able to derive a lot better economies and a lot better price point than what you would imagine.
Now, okay, so you gave an example of Brickfield's Asia College, and I'm trying to simplify things and try to make it more relatable. And correct me if I'm wrong here. So if the two areas, if anything, the two most basic and primal areas that cloud can help with is storage and processing power, and the flexibility and the scalability of it, right? So can I put it in this way? So for example, think of it, perumpamaannya, if you run a business, let's say you run a business that manufactures keropok leko, for example. That seems to be the favorite example whenever we talk about keropok leko is a local delicacy here, right? And it's made it's basically crackers but made out of fish meat.
Okay.
Yes. So think of it this way. Let's say you need a warehouse to store your stock. So you buy a big sort of like a warehouse unit, and then you need 100 people to process the meat the fish meat to become the keropok lekor. But during down season, so when during the months where people don't really buy keropok lekor, you will have a lot of excess area or excess space in your warehouse, and also you will have 100 people that's doing very little work. Versus if you were to actually think about the warehouse as something that is scalable, you don't have to own the warehouse. You can share it with other businesses, take up more space when you need to, but take up less space when you don't need to. And it's the same for the people who are going to be processing the fish meat. If you have 100 people in your staff, that's it. You will have to pay 100 wages day in and day out. But if you sort of like have a model where the people that will be servicing the meat can come in when you need them, but don't have to come in when you don't need them, that means you will only be paying the wages for the people that you need to use at any given time. Is that sort of like the same analogy of what cloud can do for your businesses in terms of scalability and flexibility?
I think you spot on so far as the analogy is concerned. It's something that Faz and I were talking about yesterday, specifically around the networking. We've always said, and I'm sure Faz will go into a little bit more detail, but we've always said that, network has traditionally been a very static thing. You buy a circuit for a certain amount of capacity and you have no flexibility in bringing that up and down. And exactly to your example, if you're catering for maximum capacity and you're paying for it in a traditional sense, you have no way of reducing that on the quiet side. So your analogy is absolutely spot on.
Right. Faz, would you like to add on?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the whatever that you mentioned, I don't know whether Louis has even tasted keropok lekor, but the analogy that you use is actually really, really perfect to describe what cloud can do for business. And I think it ties nicely with the network capability as well. So you want the scalability and flexibility to not just be at the cloud backend and front end, but you also need the network connectivity to follow the flexibility as well. So we'll further deep dive into it in the subsequent points, but I believe that the ability to do this well will definitely impact the cost structure that the customer will need to pay. I think partnering with the right partner can also, maximize or optimize the cost as well, because you don't want to be blindsided as well. So if you don't get the right advice or consultation, stuff like that, then you might not be able to see something that you might miss something. My point is, and that will cost you. Yeah.
And the thing is, Dina, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean,
no worries.
We were talking about a simple example there about a server and storage, and we've already established that cloud is a lot more than that. And, and I think if we take it away from the server example and we just think about it from an SME's desire to want to experiment. If you were looking at bringing on a new system, whatever that system might be, whether it's a new license, in the traditional context and in a perpetual world, you're in for quite an investment, and you're in for a leap of faith, because once you've bought it, it's yours, and for the duration of whatever the contract is. And if it doesn't work for you, you have no mechanism to roll back. And I think, when I talk about the flexibility, and I guess that freedom that cloud brings to organizations, it's a good example of that, because if you wanted to experiment with a new license, or whether it's backup or, or whatever, and it doesn't work for your organization, you have the agility to roll back. You stop your commitment, you stop your payment. It either works for you, it doesn't, and you could potentially move on to something else that is better suited. It all comes back to the example that you gave, but I think it's important to just put a stake in the ground, and also make sure the audience realizes that we're not just talking about server infrastructure. At the end of the day, we're talking about an ecosystem that evolves with additional services, and and I guess that's one of the hallmarks of what cloud is.
Okay, so if we're talking about the benefits that comes from the investment that is needed, in the long run, clearly it would make perfect sense. But what about the cost of adoption? What about the early upfront costs that a business should be considering? Is there a point of concern if you are starting from ground zero and you say, okay, I might want to have a look at this, the initial resistance would be a high adoption cost. What can you say about that?
Well, okay. So again, I think it's going to depend on what you're trying to do, but I think, with any type of service that you're going to buy, there is going to be some type of cost. It may not necessarily be the service that you're consuming, but it has got an implication of your organization in one form or fashion. There could be existing assets that you're trying to replace, and so one needs to consider how that's going to impact your existing ecosystem. There could be a operational methodology that exists within your environment that would need to change, and these do have some kind of bearing onto your cloud environment. I guess my best advice to any organization is, and I can't stress this enough, is when it comes down to cloud adoption, to try and do that alone is one way to do it. But this is why you've got access to partners out of the market. We've seen a lot of cloud deployments where folks have gone down the road and they haven't derived the full benefit or value of it, just purely because they haven't set up the foundation. And this is where it becomes infinitely important that you're consulting with folks that are taking you down that cloud journey, not just for the sake of transformation, but really understanding what it is that you're trying to do. And it's a journey, right? So it could start with a really small thing, and then it becomes 1,000 things there afterwards. It's not an all-in type of investment, and I think it's important to understand one of the great benefits of cloud is that it allows you to go and adopt incrementally, and you only adopt in the areas that make sense for you to do so. But it's not, from a capital cost point of view, you're not buying a service, you're not buying a perpetual license. So, and the whole principle of cloud is that it's OpEx based, and it tries to move away from that high investment, which has always been quite appealing, certainly from an SME perspective.
Yeah, OpEx based. I think that's super important to identify that, because you're buying into a service and you're not buying into actual hardware. You're not buying a server field and running it yourselves. And there's no backtrack button, as what Louis has mentioned earlier, in case that server field does not work for you, if you were to just go ahead and do everything in-house yourself, right? Which is why people like Maxis Business will be able to give the correct solutions. But in terms of incremental, right, I think this is a good point where we can go ahead and talk about the second myth over here. You mentioned that the adoption would be, on an incremental basis. You use what you can and what you need at this point in time, which makes a lot of people think that it's only large companies that are going to benefit from going into clouds, which is myth number 2. Only large corporations benefit from moving to the cloud. Our point is that it's not. It is applicable to outfits of various sizes. So let's talk here about the actual inherent benefit to both large and small corporations, and I guess how they can have access to it from a network standpoint. So maybe Faz, you want to take this one first?
Yes. So I want to share some interesting statistic a little bit. What interesting to note is that 93% of large businesses and corporates that we have, like some IDC has surveyed, who have implemented cloud, still struggle to reap the benefits. So in line with what we mentioned earlier. And only 44% of Malaysia SMEs use cloud computing, and mainly is on storage to store documents, videos, pictures, very simple applications. And this is not just unique to Malaysia. I think globally also, there's many organizations who's been, quite aggressive in trying to invest in these emerging technologies, feel like they can gain competitive advantage, but don't really understand the clear benefits of cloud. I think primarily is also maybe due to some migration struggles during the initial stage, and also the lack of talents or understanding in cloud services. Cloud is for any size of businesses. And I believe that it is important for every businesses who is thinking about adopting cloud to clearly define the purpose of using cloud. Try to understand what is it that they are trying to achieve out of it, what are the requirements, determine what type of applications that you want to run on it, and the kind of experience you want your customer to have. So this efficiency from network to cloud and the applications that you run on it will have impact to how you want to serve your customers. There are different types of cloud computing models and applications, and if you don't have any cloud experts within your own organization, especially SME, I think it's a bit challenging to have an in-house expert on clouds. You can always engage companies who know more about this, like Maxis, for example. We believe that by choosing the right approach and the right partner, SME can benefit. So we talked a bit earlier in terms of, be more cost effective, it's scalable, you can be more agile. If you want to test something, it's easier for you to do it. You can scale up your bandwidth, you can add resources or scale back resources as and when you need it. So I think at this moment we have a handful of cloud service providers who are making sure that you can do all of this smoothly with the help of your partners. Yeah.
Okay, let's paint a clear picture again. All right. So if you're talking about cloud for large corporations, for example, Maxis, where you've got thousands of people sitting in a building and you have to unify them with the system, understandable lah. But can you paint a picture for us on how cloud computing for businesses would help small organizations? For example, I can think of perhaps a small design agency, a boutique design agency. What can cloud do for them if the outfit itself is actually relatively small?
So for example, design agency, I would think there's a lot of high high definition images being transmitted, right? So
assets that requires a lot of data.
Yes. And I'm sure that it is also something and usually they work based on projects. So there are projects that will require higher demand on what you can do. So there's a lot of transactions happening, traffic going into the network and stuff like that. So that's where the scalability and flexibility plays a role. And you want to make sure that whatever that you transmit is also secure and it can be shared anytime, anywhere. So you don't have to store it in your laptop, for example, or computers in the office, but you can do all of this on the cloud. You can change it real time. You can share it with your clients real time as well. There's so many applications actually that can help SMEs to be more efficient in terms of how they do things today. So I'm very excited also for more businesses to embrace this technology actually.
Okay, got it. We've got a question that has already come in from an anonymous attendee, but it's okay. We will come to that question later on. So I think for now, anonymous attendee, I'm going to top out all the questions and we'll try to address them later. But I want to go back to Louis for a second here. Looking at the technology that is needed, right, for businesses to run their businesses. Again, if I use the boutique design agency as an example, and we wanna see if this business is suitable for cloud. Now, as we emerge again from the pandemic, we are re-looking at the very definition of what a workspace is already, where a lot of companies are basically saying, I don't need a workspace, I don't need an office space, and everybody can work from home. How can this benefit such a, for example, the boutique design agency where the artisans are everywhere and they could be working not only from different parts of town, they could quite possibly also work from different countries altogether. Let's talk about the application there.
Well, I mean, not the application per se, but yeah.
No. Yeah, I mean application as in the application of the notion to it.
I mean, consider that, and I use myself as a good example. In the first 6 months that I was in Malaysia, every single meeting that we had was face to face, and so it goes. And while there certainly was the use of collaboration, it was kept at a bare minimum. This has forced us to try adopt, be more nimble. If we consider I guess how productive we've been able to be. During this pandemic, we've got access. It's driven up the demand, not just for cloud services, but connectivity as a whole. So there's really been an upside to that. So certainly from just an efficiency point of view, and I guess even a scalability point of view, that you're able to have that expand your network. You've got access to your employees, you've got access to your suppliers, you've got access to perhaps any type of ERP systems that you just didn't have in the past. And I think that's one of the biggest points so far as SME is concerned. And I'm speaking quite generally, but when I look at why SMEs would benefit from cloud, I think what cloud has done is it's leveled the playing field, in the sense that now for the first time, you've got SMEs who've got access to applications and infrastructure that they perhaps could not afford in the past. And I use this as an example, but if we take something as like SAP, just purely because everyone knows it, and it's always been an application that's been synonymous with the rich and the wealthy and large organizations. But with applications like SAP B1, all of a sudden, if an SME was so inclined, they could use a SAP application for an ERP, which they couldn't in the past. And this is an example of what SAP's done, and this is what I mean when I say it's leveled the playing field and given SMEs access to infrastructure that they may not necessarily have had in the past.
So then it sort of like alludes to the fact that, for companies, if in the future, if the choice is to not actually invest in a workspace, in an office, and these companies can work from anywhere, it is not only an option, but it is imperative for them to actually look seriously into what cloud computing can offer for them, because then, first and foremost, the security of having the work done within the company managed well within this cloud ecosystem is there for them. Sure. Rather than say, for example, to like what Fas says earlier, everybody has all their stuff in their own laptops, which is definitely not a safe thing to do. Apart from telling you to back up, your laptop will get old and it will perish.
Yep.
So yeah, so this is yeah.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I guess we'll talk about security a little bit later. But I mean, if statistically, it's a known fact that some of the biggest cybersecurity risks that we do have is within our own organization. And when you've got, I guess, a disgruntled employee who's got access to a physical server that resides inside your network, it is a lot easier for these folks to gain access and ultimately expose your organization. But if it is cloud-based, it's central, and that access is removed. It's just one example, but it further on to what you had mentioned, there is a security benefit to that, and you make a very good point about the physical access as well. The historically where we've needed to rent large office space, that's potentially something of a past. It's just not as necessary to do that anymore, because I think in most bosses' minds, there's always been a question that if my employees are working remotely, will they be as productive as what they are in the office? And I think this has been a great opportunity for all of us to step up and prove that that is the case. There's a lot of self-management that's happening, and business does continue.
Right, yeah. So the physical server space literally spanner in the works. That's all. That's the risk that we are taking away from these businesses. But okay, since we're already talking about security, let's go on to the third myth, which is we're talking about security. So the myth is the cloud is less secure. We've already spoken about security. We've got another question that we want you, the attendees, to go ahead and ask us. Even before asking the question, there's already somebody that's answered the question. The cloud is less secure. Go ahead and scan this, and we want to know if you agree or disagree with this. Somebody agreed, saying that the cloud is indeed less secure as compared to a physical server space. So we want to know what your answers are. Go ahead and scan using your camera. Okay, we're at 50-50 right now. So if it's two people, one person says it's secure, another person says not secure. Okay. Interesting. The agree portion is not moving. So there are a substantial number of people that actually thinks that having cloud is less secure. I guess you've got your work cut out for you, Faz and Louis. I think we're going to need a lot more than just this webinar to convince people. But we are saying that it is a myth, guys. So even though we're asking you what your opinion is, we are saying that this is a myth, and we are saying that cloud is as secure, if not more secure, compared to private. But the opinion of the attendees is very clear. They agree that cloud is less secure. Louis, you are the expert here. You know the technology. You know the stuff. Educate these people. You've got a lot of non-believers,
and it doesn't surprise me. I think since the start of cloud, this has been the biggest debate, right? And to be perfectly honest, you've got really compelling arguments in favor of both. What I'm not going to try and do is convince you that cloud is more secure. I think I'm going to try and take perhaps a different spin on it in the sense that, if nothing else, one or 2 points to consider. But I mean, I think the biggest issue with security is that perception that as soon as your data leaves your network and goes onto cloud, that you no longer have control of it. And that isn't necessarily the case. And I guess the benefit of on-premise security is obvious because it's tangible, and it requires human maintenance. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's more secure than a cloud environment. It doesn't mean that it's less prone to error just because you've removed automation. One could argue that it's more likely to be accessible or have be impacted by human error by virtue of the fact that it's not automated. If I look back on cloud, we used to look at cloud providers for two things. We used to look at them for a cost benefit, and we used to look at them for flexibility. And that isn't the case anymore. Security has become an intrinsic part of the success and the continued success in use cases of cloud today. And if you consider that with the global cloud providers, there are hundreds and thousands of tenants that operate within that platform, from SMEs right through to corporate banks. They are no longer competing on just price and quality of service. They're competing on the security of that platform. And that really does get one to think, yeah. The debate will continue whether on-premise is more secure than otherwise. But I think what's important to realize is that security is the responsibility of not just the service provider, but the end user as well. And it's important to understand where that demarcation is. Who's taking ownership of what, and where does the responsibility end and start? And I think if you consider cloud to be an extension of your on-premise network, and you apply the same principles, you have good governance, you're as secure as what you can be, whether it's on-prem or otherwise. And I think when you look at it in that way, it becomes less a question of which one's good or bad, and more about which one better serves me. Yeah, and I think that's the way it should be considered, or at least looked at.
An interesting point that you raised over there is that security is a joint responsibility between the end user and also the service provider. What are the most common misconceptions about this from your perspective? Is it the case of I think it's your problem, or no, it's my problem? Can you give us an example of how this can go really bad if not managed really well?
Oh, yeah. It's exactly that. It's not understanding where the demarcation zone is. If it's that perception that a cloud service provider, and in some cases, they do take full ownership of it. So don't misunderstand. It depends on what type of service you're taking. But if there's this perception that if I go into cloud, automatically everything's going to be secure, in a lot of cases, that's not That's not how it works. Service providers or partners will make sure that the profile's right, or if you think about it in the context of a house, they'll make sure that the walls are there, the doors there, and the doors locked. But ultimately, it's the behavior of the user that is going to test the integrity of that environment. If you leave your door unlocked, you're not updating patches, you're not doing a number of different things. This is where problems do occur. So we spoke about it earlier, and I stressed the importance of a partner who understands, the pitfalls of what we've seen in the past. Make sure that that foundation is there and that it's maintained. Then a lot of these things can be overcome.
Okay, you call it a house, I'm going to call it a bastion, because that's what we're trying to say over here, right? It is secure. However, just like in any bastion, there are basically, if I did my reading correctly, there are basically two main types of bastions, which is you've got the public cloud, and also you've got the private cloud, right? Now, the benefit of having a private cloud is that it is served by a network that is built specifically for it, and it is 100% secure. But in the case of Maxis Business over here, and this is where I'm going to turn to fast, the bastion itself, even if it is secure, and we know that it is, the roads that lead to it, what sort of additional security is offered on the roads that lead up to the bastion, in this case, the network that is servicing this cloud?
Okay, so there are different, so the cloud in itself, okay, so there's network basically is the whole architecture. So the cloud, in order to operate a cloud, you need to have the whole architecture set out. So you need to determine all those things with your partner. And I believe that the security can exist within the cloud itself, and there's transportation to it as well. So we do have, so to know, basically it depends on the type of information and data that you want to put on cloud and applications that you want on it, that determines the level of security that you need in terms of safeguarding within the cloud infrastructure, as well as the network connectivity infrastructure. So at the moment, we at Maxis, we are very proud with our network infrastructure. We are MEF 3.0 certified, and we do have different types of network connectivity as well, to make sure that whatever data is being transmitted or traffic that is being transmitted over our network is secure. So ni macam already going into the next question.
Okay, all right, okay. Then hold on to your thoughts there. Also, I'm looking at the at some of the key points that was highlighted that we discussed ahead of this. 95% of cloud breaches are caused by configuration mistakes. This is what Louis has mentioned earlier. But what about internal threats? Again, if we are talking about the physical server, physical cloud, physical server, then it's literally somebody walking in with a spanner and that's it.
Try to do something, purposely.
And try to do something. But what about internal threats? How can this be managed, given the fact that all that is needed for a person to work on data within a cloud is access? How can Malaysian businesses, or rather business owners, have more comfort knowing that access to individuals within the organization can be managed properly? Who can answer this?
Louis, maybe I can share a little bit. So as far as I understand, Louis, as part of the cloud architecture, there is a thing called the policy that we can set up in terms of access, the workflow, who can access and do what, and that you can control all of that centrally as well. So maybe Louis, you can explain a little bit further.
Sure, and then I'll try use it's an example of I guess the way we've set up our cloud, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's not just a single a single gate into that environment. And there are a lot of different mechanisms that one can put in place. And security is not just one thing. So it's not just a firewall and I'm done. You can go so far as encrypting your data. You can go so far as locking it down, so that even if a person did go and steal it, they really couldn't do anything with it. So there's a lot of different steps that one could take. You could there's intrusion protection, and so the list goes on. I wanted to talk about that though, because you struck a thought. One of the things that we tried to do when we created Maxis Cloud was that we realized that certainly from an access and a governance perspective, it is going to be one of the key parts that we needed to overcome. And we've set up that platform in a very similar way, where it's approval based. So in other words, if I want to access that environment and I want to make any type of changes, I can't just invoke them. So an organization will go and determine what that almost chains of custody would look like. So in other words, if I wanted to do that change, it has to go to a next step for approval, a verification, and so forth. And you can almost do a daisy chain between the organization and your managed services partner, so that they themselves could vet it. And then there's an auditable track record of any type of request or any changes that were made. This is a good example of the additional step that or steps that get put in place to ensure that you can preserve the integrity of a person's environment or a cloud environment. There's a lot you can do. And this goes back to what we spoke about earlier, making sure that, if that framework and that, I guess there's that methodology is applied, you're going to be as safe as what you can be. And that's regardless of whether that's a cloud environment or whether or not that's on a physical environment.
Okay, then the other question would be about the ownership. And I know I mentioned this in one of our pre-production meetups, about the ownership of the data that you actually store in the cloud servers. And the reason why I'm asking this is because a colleague of mine once, we were talking about, and in this case, we're talking about our own little cloud that comes attached with our phones, right? This colleague of mine was very reluctant about uploading their pictures onto the cloud, because they say, the moment you do that, you don't own that data already. In the case of cloud for business, what is the understanding that we need to have about the ownership of the data that is saved on cloud?
Right. Okay. Look, I mean, I'm certainly I'm the last person to profess that I'm a legal expert in any sort of way. But what I can tell you, simply put, is that you always retain ownership of your data. That data does belong to you. The service provider, and I think this is where the market needs to show some degree of I suppose, make sure they're doing their homework when they go into a cloud environment, because not all clouds are created equal, and the way that they operate might change. The data remains yours, but in some cases, the cloud provider does have some access to it in the sense that they control it. So where it resides, whether it's in a specific data center or geographic location. Other service providers will allow you to be prescriptive about that, and you can decide where that data will be, whether it's in a different country or otherwise. But the data is always yours, and once you've terminated your service, by right, they have to delete that and get rid of your data. They are permitted to obviously make the data available to authorities if they subpoena it. But other than that, the data is your possession. It's your asset.
Right. Okay, thank you for taking that. Okay, so now let's move on to myth number 4 very quickly, which is the cloud is independent from my network. Now, Faz, you mentioned earlier that when we're considering cloud, it is the entire architecture. It's not a singular entity, and it comes prepackaged with all the things that is needed to ensure efficiency and effectiveness. Now, the myth is that the cloud is independent from a network and it is separate. How do we need to see this? Why is it important for the network? What is the important thing that we need to consider about our network when considering cloud migration?
Yeah. So for cloud for you to be able to run applications or to use cloud effectively, definitely need internet connectivity. So the choice of internet connectivity and your network setup will depend on the type of applications and cloud services that you want to run. For example, in some businesses, it could be a mission critical. You want to run a mission critical application. You cannot afford for everything to be, or some transactions to be delayed, or what you want to push to market to be delayed, for example. Then if that is the case, then you should look for low latency, high transfer speed connectivity, and choose a compute speed that will provide the right support and capacity as well. So you need to also look at then what kind of storage capacity on cloud that you need, for example, for backup, archiving your data over the internet, as defined, and that also define the type of network that you need to be able to deliver those things. It may sound like a bit complicated. How do I decide? I don't know how to start, for example, and that's where we will step in. We will advise our customers depending. So it is not one size fits all kind of thing. So it really depends on the conversation with the customer. So usually we look at factors such as, what kind of applications your business use, the number of users you have that you connect to internet, the amount of data being consumed or upload, download kind of thing. What's your security and firewall framework and setup, for example. And Maxis is one of the internet providers in the country. We support these kind of needs in multiple ways. For example, from a broadband perspective, supervised fiber plan that we have, which also include internet security and wireless backup 4G, to the only pay-per-use dedicated internet as well. So you can imagine that you can size up your highway depending on how much traffic you wanna use for a particular day or a particular month.
Scalability.
Yeah, you can scale and be flexible. So if you decide at some point you want to widen it, you can always do that, right? So you don't halter your business operations. You can always do that quickly. So this is what we are trying to do. It's very aligned with this evolution of this cloud technology as well. So we want it to be consistent as well in terms of, you want to adopt cloud, you want to be flexible, agile, and your internet connectivity should also be the same. Yeah.
Okay. Now let me go into layman mode. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I thought layman already just now. No.
No. It was already quite, very. You've elucidated it very nicely. But you struck a thought in me, and you made me think about something. You need a good connectivity, and you need all that stuff in place in order for you to have a solid cloud infrastructure. What about areas? Since people can operate from anywhere right now, what about areas where, probably not so urban areas, perhaps somebody who lives in a not so urban area where the internet is okay for personal consumption, but maybe not industry level. Do you think that this is something they should be considering, or how can they buck up what they have right now?
Okay, so in order to provide this internet connectivity, the high quality internet connectivity, there's various type of infrastructure that we can have in order to provide that kind of service to our customer. Okay, and at this point, yes, if you don't know already, we have about 5 million household or areas, premises that have been equipped with fiber today, has access to it, and under Jendela government initiative, we are also expanding that rapidly to make sure that everybody will have access to fiber. But other than fiber, we can also use a wireless in this sense, as long as it provides the same level of experience or quality that we want. It really depends on what the business needs, right? So if it's maybe average usage or something like that, we can use different type of solutions or internet connectivity. It doesn't have to be wired, but we do also have a wired connectivity if you want, as and when you need. So it becomes like a more customized kind of solution to them. So it's not like there's no option, there's a lot of options. That's also why I encourage businesses to have that conversation with us so that we can solution properly in terms of what you need and the connectivity that can, support that kind of applications. Yeah.
Right. Okay, understood. But are we saying now that still fiber is probably the most stable at this point in time? Fiber is the most stable and is probably the perfect ingredient that is needed for a good cloud infrastructure?
I don't know about you, Louis. I would think fiber is preferential.
As compared to, say, wireless.
Yes. Fiber is a preferred technology for us to enable.
Okay.
Yeah, but
what does our in-house technology expert say?
I was wondering who you're talking to.
You are the in-house expert.
Am I the expert? No.
Yeah,
when it comes to connectivity, Faz is the expert. Look, I mean, it stands to reason that fiber access is always going to be preferred, but it isn't your only option. Right. And I think for those outlying areas where FWA makes sense to do so, then certainly we need to capitalize on that. It seems like we're a broken record, but again, it's going to depend on your access medium. If you're pushing, you're running Office 365 and you're using it for mail, latencies or it's not going to be too much of an issue. So it really depends on, what critical application you're running. I mean, we can even go so far as setting up a direct connect right into the AWS network. And there you're bypassing the internet altogether. So it really comes down to the need that required. But I think, as we progress and peering becomes more important, as we have these public cloud providers that start landing within the borders of Malaysia, it's going to be a lot easier for us to set up super highways, if you will, directly into that infrastructure. And, worrying about your connection into cloud is going to be something that was yesterday's issue.
Got it. Great. Okay. We've basically spoken about almost all the elements required. You need the network, you need the right architecture and all that. And now we're going to make one full circle and talk about money again. But in this scenario, it's a slightly different kind of money. Not the money I need to invest in the actual technology, but the money I need to invest in the people to run the technology, which is myth number 5. I need to hire a dedicated cloud team to run my organization's cloud requirements. Is this true or false?
This is an interesting one for me. And I think before I answer the question, I think there's probably a point or two that's worth calling out so far as this myth is concerned. At the heart of it, cloud aims to overcome a lot of the operational inefficiencies that we were faced with in the past, not to compound them. And if you think, historically, we used to have a lot of disparate systems. We had some interoperability issues. We had lack of automation. We had lack of visibility. And this led to a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of repetitive tasks. And what clouds really allowed us to do is a lot of organizations that have adopted cloud have changed their operational culture, where with automation, with visibility, their IT staff are able to become a lot more efficient and are able to do more and perform more functions than they were in the past, where you had a dedicated server guy, you had a dedicated network guy, and so forth. So I think, that's just something that I want to call out. So far as the myth itself is concerned, I think, not to belabor this point, I think this is where that service, that managed cloud partner really becomes important. It's the right partner isn't going to go and prescribe a specific cloud to you. It's about taking your requirement and identifying the cloud that's going to match that requirement, making sure that the security foundations are in place. we touched on this a little bit earlier, to understand where you are from a transformation point of view. Yeah, we all want to get to the end game, but where is that customer today? Don't force the transformation just for the sake of transformation, and ensure that it's done on the customer's terms. And I think this is where you're going to derive the real benefit from a managed service provider, because we are, at the end of the day, going to act as your virtual CIO, if you will, and take a lot of that burden away from organizations.
I can see that there are a couple of questions that are already in, asking interesting questions about this, but we'll address them later. But Fasi, did you want to add to that?
Okay, cloud will not solve everything. So I think there are some parts of the organization that you might need to still have people to look after it, but most of it, yes, you can use people like us to provide the advice, consultancy, like Louis said. We can be your CIO in terms of advising, consulting, and working with our partners to enable services for you. So in terms of adopting cloud, we believe that yes, you don't need a dedicated team solely just to manage the cloud itself. It can be outsourced in a way. Yes.
But that's why you have a service provider that's able to actually assist you with this.
Yes.
It leaves, the beauty is, if you, from my perspective, and I'm not trying to sell you I'm not trying to sell you a bucket of sweets here, but to me, the way I see it, right, if I'm running a business, I would much rather use every single waking moment I have and all my resources to focus on doing what I do best, which is think about my product, think about my services, and focus on that. Everything that is needing to happen in the background, I get somebody else to worry about it. And I guess that is what working with a service provider such as yourselves does for my business, right? It frees up my capacity to actually focus on the things that would give me the highest profit, the highest revenue, and let somebody else worry about all the stuff that I need to pay for and stuff like that, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we are now bang on 12 o'clock, and I'm very cognizant of the time. So let's just take the next couple of minutes to go ahead and answer some of these questions. I know we've got some very, very, very interesting questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with this Q&A panel over here that we have. The first question that we want to take is from this anonymous attendee, and I think this was asked quite early on. I'm just wondering, how hard is the beginner work for data in terms of coding instead of running it through the server? Do let me know. Do you actually need to do coding if you wanna work on if you want to put your stuff on cloud? I think that's the beauty of it, right? You don't actually have to do any coding yourself. So basically they're asking, do we need to do any coding if I want to put all my stuff on cloud?
So I guess it depends on what it is that you're trying to do. So I certainly wouldn't say that that's a yes or no type of answer. Look, simplistically, just in the absence of example, I'll come up with one. If it's a case that you're trying to, simply take a physical server and build the equivalent in a cloud platform. What we've tried to do with that management interface is to take a lot of that burden away, where it becomes it's not as IT orientated as it used to be, and a little bit more friendly. It's a case of drop-down menus, selecting which cloud provider that you want, selecting the type of resources that you want, whether or not you want 1 CPU, 2 CPU, and the ability to scale it. So we've tried to simplify that as much as humanly possible. I guess it goes back to what we were saying right in the beginning. If there's a component of that equation that is missing, that's why you have service providers and why you have managed service providers to try and assist you in that regard. So it's difficult for me to say that that's yes or no, but we've certainly tried to simplify it as much as what we can and try to abstract a lot of that complexity for the end user. Right.
I mean, another analogy would be, if we're talking about the house that Ruby was mentioning earlier, we're not just going to give you, I think the service provider is not going to give you a house and then you figure out everything, you don't buy a house and figure out how to put up doors because it would come as part and parcel of the service. It depends on how you can decide on how you want to decorate the house, yes, but you certainly don't have to figure out how to install the faucet, how to put the doors up. That's not how this works. I think it depends on the negotiation that you will have with the service provider, in this case, Maxis Business.
Sorry, and I think just one very, very brief point I wanted to make. And again, we opened up this discussion and we said that cloud wasn't one thing, and I keep using the server example just purely for simplicity. But it could be the very first step that you take into cloud is that Office 365 license. It could be backing up that one physical server that you do have in your office. That could very well be the simplest way to get into this journey as well. So, the audience also needs to consider it in that context.
Great. Thank you, Louis. Next question is most definitely for Faz. How will 5G affect cloud adoption?
Oh, okay. Louis, you can also add later, okay? So when 5G is made available, I think it will always accelerate and amplify what technology can do for enterprise due to its benefits. So it's ultra low latency, have higher quality of service and high throughout the application. So when 5G and cloud comes together, Malaysian businesses for sure will be able to adapt industrial IoT solutions and other solutions that will unlock the power of automation and analytics. I think there's so many things we can do on 5G connectivity and cloud together.
I've got to say, we're super excited about this. When we start thinking about it, it gives us the opportunity to also start jumping our thought process a few steps forward, because that's over time we're going to see some really exciting things like edge computing, where we're going to see I guess what we've been trying to do on networking, cloud, and a lot of different solutions in different ecosystems, and these are going to start to converge. And I think where we start delivering virtual functions on network, these are the things that 5G are going to accelerate. So yeah, we're really looking forward to the next few months.
A very simplistic example as well. Like for example, right now, there is for SMEs who's doing retail, for example, there's so many customer behaviors that you can mine, the one data that you can collect from the transactions that you're doing with your customers, the clicks that they do, for example, on your e-commerce website. And you can mine all of these things faster and more, and you can use this to provide personalized experience to your customers as well. So there's so many use cases that we can.
I'm most definitely excited already, because I'm on an iPad Pro, which is apparently 5G ready. And when indeed there is 5G in this country, and so for example, I might be editing a video and my colleague Amy is in the office and I'm sitting in a cafe in KLCC. Of course, I have to say KLCC because next to Maxis Tower. Therefore, the 5G is definitely going to be strong there, right? So we could be editing the video concurrently, house it on a cloud, and it's going to be done almost seamlessly. Yeah. So yeah, the possibilities are definitely there. Okay, let's go to the next question from Alvin. Sounds like there's so many things I need to consider. Is there like a best practice cloud setup I can copy and paste for my company? Nice one. Okay, that's the question from Alvin. Let's go for that one.
I mean, let me take it. I mean, it's so true, right? We spoke about that definition in the beginning, and it could be quite complex. I think something like this is, I don't believe that there's, a universal blueprint that one has to apply to. I think, with this type of thing is to try keep it simple, identify where your actual pain points are. Don't rush into cloud transformation too quickly. It's more, we mentioned that it's incremental, and rely on a service provider to guide you through it. I understand where you are today, where it is that you're trying to do or get to, and start identifying what the incremental steps will be along that journey.
Right. Okay. Faz, did you want to add to that, or shall I move on to the next question?
Maybe a little point that I want to make is that I think every businesses, they have their own ambition, vision how do they want to create competitive advantage, and how you think about cloud can help you. How you want to use cloud can help you. So I believe to a certain extent there is no one size fit all kind of thing. So it's best to have that conversation and try and take your time, like Louis said.
And the thing is, I mean, the topic is nebulous. And I think if you can get quite overwhelmed with what you can do, but just because cloud has a million things that it can do doesn't mean you should do. So it's keeping it simple, really identifying the things that you're going to derive value from, and take it from there. And it's about the ability to be experimental, and it's that agility that brings into your organization. So it's a great opportunity for you to capitalize on that.
Let me give another analogy. I'm the master of layman analogies here, right? If you walk into a Starbucks, yes, it can be very daunting when they start asking you grande venti, soy, oat, Yes, you have a lot of decisions to make. But if you walk into a Starbucks and then you say, "Hi, I need a white coffee. I'm really sleepy and I'm trying to watch my weight," I am very sure that they will be able to figure out, okay, probably a venti latte with soy milk with double shot is the best solution for you. So that it's strong coffee, you don't have full fat milk and stuff like that. So if you provide the problem statement, the service provider will be able to give you possible solutions. So you don't have to worry about the A's to Z's of everything. Correct, guys?
Well said, Dino.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We've got two more to go. From Cadence, I have trouble convincing my management to move to cloud. They're not comfortable with the idea of parking our data with Amazon, Microsoft, or Google because they're all US-based companies. Any advice? Great question.
It is a good question, and I could see that being a real challenge for a lot of organizations. So I guess two things. It's one would need to try and identify whether or not the concern is a security concern. In other words, we spoke about that a little bit earlier, that the data is leaving my network, and therefore, am I still in control? And I think we touched on how we could address that. Making sure that there's encryption and the best practices apply. The other thing to consider as well is that cloud service providers do allow you in most cases to select the geographic location of where that infrastructure is hosted. So if it's US, that's somewhat of a concern, you could always go and put it in a Singapore region. The point is you've got a lot of options. One thing that I do want to stress, though, is that public cloud in the form of AWS, Microsoft, JCP, and so forth are not your only options. We do, and Maxis has built out a local-based cloud. So if it's data sovereignty that becomes a problem, that can also be addressed. Because at the end of the day, the Maxis cloud offers the same type of flexibility, the same type of automation that you would expect in a public cloud, and that is local based. So don't just think that cloud has to be in an AWS or otherwise. It's the very reason why we built out these local clouds to cater for those type of requirements.
Great, thank you. And one last question. I think my current fiber connection is not enough. This is coming from an anonymous attendee. Employees complain that retrieving data from the cloud is very slow, but I'm ready to commit to heavy investment to build a dedicated internet access for my business. What can I do? This person is very smart to say that they are, to not put their names down, anonymous, because they've already committed to heavy investment. This was a surefire customer here. We missed out on the opportunity because they put anonymous there. Already. Hello. Okay.
So thank you. So dedicated internet access is definitely one of the option. Is kind of our, in a way, premium way of getting internet access is dedicated. So you have SLA, our level of quality that ties to it. But we do have options. So if you know that retrieving data is slow, we need to understand more about how you're using it, what kind of data, what do you use the data for example, then we can prescribe the right internet connectivity to the customer. So it can, like what we discussed previously, it can range from a broadband service with higher bandwidth, or if you need more, then it could be usage-based internet where you can scale the bandwidth as what you want, pay-per-use kind of model. So that really depends on the type of business that you are in. Or we can also have direct dedicated internet access, which is like a direct connection to the business location, then it's uninterrupted. So it really
sorry, sure. It really depends. It really depends on your application.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we are not here to give you the answers to your specific application right now. It all depends on the conversation that you need to have. But step number one is to have that conversation. So on that note, I wanna ask my colleague Lynette to go ahead and flash that slide up. There is a QR code that we have on that slide where all you need to do is to go ahead and scan that QR code for you to start that conversation. We'll be able to patch you up with somebody that will be able to help you with your inquiry. But this is where the journey starts for a lot of you. Go ahead and whip your cameras out and scan this QR code and start the conversation, because it really depends on your own application, on your own usage. But there is a solution for everybody out there, big or small. The key is to talk about it now so that you are creating that layer of resilience for your business. You are future-proofing your business, because this is, I think it's not too far fetched for me to say that this is probably going to be a norm in the future. So adopt now so that you don't miss out on the benefits that will come along the way. Okay, so I think that's all the time that we have. Cognizant, 12:15 on the dot. Brilliant, guys. I want to close with this wonderful quote that was mentioned by Alvin. So Amy, go and pull that up, please. This is after what something that Louis said. The topic is nebulous. Nice cloud pun there. It is. The topic is indeed nebulous, but hey, that's what this session is for. It is for you to understand a little bit more about, what we're talking about cloud here, and the benefits, the inherent benefits that it's going to have on your business. And this is something that you definitely have to consider if you are serious about future-proofing your business. So on behalf of Astro AWANI LINC, I want to say a very big thank you to Louis and also to Fazliza for this wonderful session. Very, very jam-packed. We debunked 5 myths, but I think, if we had the time, we had another hour, we could have done so much more. So thank you to Louis and to Faz for a very lively session. Don't forget, if you like this session, right after this, the moment my colleague Amy ends this session, there will be a pop-up window that will ask you to rate us. So go ahead and give us 5 stars so that we can pass this on to our partners and tell them that this is the kind of conversation that needs to happen. And this is so that we can help Malaysian businesses achieve greater heights together, collectively in this. All right, and my name is Dino Omar. It's been really, really awesome having all of you here. And we hope you have a wonderful week ahead of you. Thank you so much, Faz again, and Louis again. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dino. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.